Nothing is worth your peace. How to Let Go, Detach, and Become Mentally Strong, published by the Growth Mind Audiobook. Introduction. Take a moment and ask yourself a difficult question. What are you still allowing to disturb your peace? Maybe it is a person who no longer belongs in your life but still occupies your thoughts. Maybe it is a conversation you keep rewriting in your head. Maybe you are waiting for an apology, an explanation, a message, or a change that may never come. Perhaps you are carrying a mistake you made years ago and punishing yourself for something you cannot undo. Whatever it is, stop for a moment and name it, because you cannot release what you refuse to recognize. Many people say they want peace, but they continue giving their attention to the very things that destroy it. They check who viewed their message, they replay someone's words, they imagine arguments that will probably never happen. They try to control what other people think, feel, choose, and do. Then they wonder why their mind never becomes quiet. This audiobook begins with a different approach. You are going to take your attention back. You are going to identify what drains you, confront what you have been avoiding, accept what cannot be changed, and separate your responsibilities from everyone else's. You will learn to stop chasing people who repeatedly make you question your value. You will establish boundaries before resentment takes over. You will practice pausing before reacting. You will learn how to walk away without revenge and detach without becoming cold. Most importantly, you will stop confusing emotional attachment with love and suffering with loyalty. You will still care. You will still feel disappointment. You will still have moments when the past hurts. Becoming mentally strong does not mean becoming untouchable. It means becoming capable of feeling something deeply without allowing that feeling to take control of your decisions. So do not listen to these chapters simply hoping to feel better. Listen prepared to change something. Identify what is draining you. Release what is outside your control. Protect what matters. Choose your response. And when something repeatedly costs you your dignity, stability, or peace, have the courage to let it go, because nothing is worth your peace. Chapter 1. Expose everything that is draining your peace. Before you can protect your peace, you have to discover where you are losing it. That sounds simple, but it is harder than it seems. Most people know they feel exhausted, irritated, distracted, or emotionally overwhelmed, yet they cannot immediately explain why. They blame a busy schedule, difficult people, bad timing, or an unfortunate day. Sometimes those things are real, but often the deeper problem is hidden in what the mind keeps returning to. Think about the last time you were physically doing one thing while mentally living somewhere else. You were eating, working, driving, or lying in bed, but your thoughts were somewhere completely different. Perhaps you were wondering why someone had not replied. Perhaps you were replaying an argument. Perhaps you were imagining what you would say if you ever got another chance to explain yourself. Your body was in the present, but your attention was paying rent to the past or the future. That is one of the quiet ways peace disappears. Your attention is constantly being spent. Every time you repeatedly revisit a person, fear an outcome, compare yourself with someone else, or rehearse a painful memory, you are giving mental space to something. The important question is not whether you are allowed to think about these things. Of course you are. The question is whether they deserve the amount of attention you keep giving them. Start becoming honest about that. You may discover that one person's opinion has more influence over your mood than your own judgment. You may notice that a relationship ended months ago, yet you still organize your thoughts around it. You may realize that you spend more time worrying about what could go wrong than actually preparing for what is in front of you. You may even discover that some of your stress comes from expectations you never clearly communicated but secretly hoped other people would understand. None of this makes you weak. It makes you human, but recognizing it gives you a choice. Take an emotional inventory. Ask yourself, what keeps returning to my mind? Who can change my mood with a single message? Which situation am I repeatedly trying to solve, even though I have no control over the outcome? What conversation am I still having in my imagination? What am I afraid will happen if I stop holding on? Do not rush to answer these questions with what sounds mature. Answer them honestly. Perhaps your peace is being drained by the need to be understood. You explain yourself again and again because you cannot tolerate the possibility that someone might misunderstand you. Perhaps it is the need to be chosen. You keep proving your value to people who have already shown you that they are uncertain about giving you a place in their lives. Perhaps it is comparison. You look at another person's progress and quietly turn their success into evidence that you are falling behind. Once you identify the source, do something different. Stop treating every thought as an instruction. A thought can appear without requiring your attention. A memory can surface without requiring you to revisit it. Someone can disappoint you without requiring an immediate response. Uncertainty can exist without forcing you to predict every possible outcome. This is where protecting your peace begins, not by controlling everything around you, but by becoming selective about what you repeatedly carry within you. You cannot close every door through which stress enters your life, but you can stop leaving every door wide open. Today, notice what repeatedly steals your attention. Write it down, name it without excuses. Then ask one final question. Is this something I need to act on, accept, or release? That question creates the first separation between you and the disturbance. And once you can see what is draining your peace, you are finally ready to stop fighting the wrong battle. Chapter 2. Stop fighting reality and face what is. Once you identify what is draining your peace, the next step is harder. Stop fighting the fact that it happened. Awareness can show you the wound, but acceptance is what prevents you from reopening it every day. Most suffering becomes heavier when we add an argument to the event itself. Someone leaves, and we think they should have stayed. Someone disappoints us, and we think they should have known better. An opportunity disappears, and we think, this was supposed to be mine. The event is painful enough, but then the mind begins building an alternate version of reality. We compare what happened with what we believe should have happened, and the distance between those two versions becomes another source of pain. That distance can consume enormous energy. Acceptance means closing that gap. It does not mean saying that what happened was fair. It does not mean approving of someone's behavior or pretending that something painful did not matter. Acceptance simply means looking at reality without demanding that it become different before you allow yourself to move forward. Imagine standing in the rain while arguing with the sky. You can be angry about the weather. You can wish the clouds would disappear. You can complain that your plans have been ruined. But none of those reactions make the rain stop. You have two choices: remain outside and fight what you cannot change, or acknowledge the weather and decide what to do next. Life often works the same way. You may never receive the apology you wanted. You may never understand why someone changed. You may never get the opportunity to redo a decision. You may have to accept that a relationship has reached its end, even though your feelings have not caught up with reality. You may have to accept that someone you love cannot give you the kind of relationship you hoped for. The mind often resists these truths because acceptance feels like losing hope. But there is a difference between hope and denial. Hope says, something better may still be possible. Denial says, I will refuse to acknowledge what is already in front of me. Learn to tell the difference. When something painful happens, stop asking only, why did this happen to me? Ask a more useful question. What is true now? That question brings you back to solid ground. Maybe the truth is that the person has moved on. Maybe the truth is that the opportunity has passed. Maybe the truth is that you made a mistake. Maybe the truth is that you cannot change another person's feelings. Whatever the answer is, face it without decorating it with fantasy or destroying yourself with blame. Then ask, what is still mine to do? This is where acceptance becomes action. If something can be repaired, repair it. If an apology is appropriate, give it. If a lesson needs to be learned, learn it. If a boundary needs to be created, create it. But if nothing can be changed, stop spending your life trying to negotiate with the past. You do not need to like reality before you accept it. You only need enough courage to stop pretending it is something else. The moment you accept what is true, your energy becomes available again. You can stop replaying the same scene and start building the next one. You can stop asking why someone did what they did and begin asking what you will do with what remains. Acceptance does not erase pain. It removes the unnecessary struggle surrounding the pain. And that distinction matters, because once you stop fighting reality, another question becomes unavoidable. If you cannot control what other people do, what exactly is within your control? That question leads to the next step in becoming mentally strong. Chapter 3. Separate your power from what you cannot control. Once you accept reality, you face a truth that can feel uncomfortable at first. Much of what disturbs you was never yours to control. You can influence people, communicate with them, encourage them, support them, and sometimes warn them, but you cannot operate their minds from the inside. You cannot make someone understand you, choose you, respect you, change for you, or become ready simply because you are ready. This is where a great deal of unnecessary suffering begins. We keep trying to manage what belongs to someone else while neglecting what has always belonged to us. Think about how much energy can disappear into questions like, why did they do that? How can I make them see my side? What if they change? How do I make them care? These questions may feel important, but many of them have no action attached to them. They keep the mind moving without moving your life forward. So draw a line. On one side, place what belongs to you, your choices, your words, your habits, your standards, your attention, your boundaries, your effort, and your response to what happens. On the other side, place what belongs to other people, their decisions, moods, opinions, priorities, honesty, maturity, affection, and willingness to change. Then stop crossing the line. This does not mean becoming passive. If someone treats you poorly, you can address it. If a situation needs action, take action. If something is within your influence, use that influence responsibly. The point is not to become powerless. The point is to stop confusing influence with control. You might tell someone exactly how their behavior affects you, but you cannot force them to care. You can prepare carefully for an opportunity, but you cannot guarantee the outcome. You can offer someone forgiveness, but you cannot make them become a different person. You can give your best effort, but you cannot command the world to reward it on your preferred schedule. When you understand this, your energy becomes more precise. Instead of asking, how do I change this person? Ask, what response is available to me? Instead of asking, how do I make this outcome happen? Ask, what can I do well today? Instead of asking, why don't they understand me? Ask, have I communicated clearly, and what will I do if they still disagree? These questions return responsibility to its proper place. There is another important part of this lesson. Stop using control as a substitute for security. Sometimes we try to predict every possibility because uncertainty makes us uncomfortable. We check, analyze, rehearse, question, and overthink because our minds believe that enough mental effort will eventually produce certainty. It will not. You can prepare for uncertainty, but you cannot eliminate it. Mental strength is learning to function without having every answer. Give yourself permission to say, I do not know what they will do. I do not know how this will end. I do not know whether everything will work out exactly as I hope, but I know how I want to conduct myself. That is a powerful position. You stop placing your emotional stability on a future you cannot guarantee. You stop waiting for someone else's behavior to give you permission to feel okay. You stop treating another person's choices as a verdict on your worth, and something changes inside you. You become less reactive because you are no longer trying to manage the entire world. You become more decisive because your attention is directed toward what you can actually influence. You become calmer because uncertainty no longer feels like an emergency. But there is still a deeper challenge. Sometimes we understand that we cannot control someone, yet we remain emotionally attached to the outcome. We know we cannot force them to stay, but we desperately want them to stay. We know we cannot control what happens next, but our peace still depends on a particular result. That is where control ends and attachment begins. And learning to release that attachment is the next step. Chapter 4. Detach without abandoning your heart. Once you understand what you can and cannot control, another truth becomes visible. Knowing you cannot control an outcome does not automatically stop you from becoming emotionally attached to it. You may understand that someone has the right to make their own choices, yet still spend your days hoping they choose the outcome you want. You may know that a relationship is uncertain, yet check your phone repeatedly. You may accept that someone has changed, yet secretly wait for the version of them you remember to return. This is where detachment becomes necessary. Detachment is often misunderstood. Some people think it means becoming distant, emotionless, or indifferent. Others use it as an excuse to stop caring altogether. But healthy detachment is something much more balanced. It means allowing yourself to care without making your emotional stability dependent on what happens next. You can love someone and still accept that you cannot keep them. You can care about a person and refuse to chase them. You can hope for something while remaining prepared for a different outcome. You can appreciate what a relationship meant to you without needing it to continue forever. That is emotional freedom. Think about holding water in your hands. If you squeeze your fists tightly because you are afraid of losing it, much of the water escapes between your fingers. If you hold your hands gently, you cannot guarantee that every drop will remain, but you are no longer destroying what you are trying to keep through desperation. People and circumstances are similar. The tighter your grip becomes, the more your fear begins directing your behavior. You check more often, you question more, you explain yourself repeatedly. You become sensitive to small changes. You search for signs. You start interpreting silence, short messages, delayed replies, and ordinary behavior as evidence of something larger. Your attention becomes organized around uncertainty. Detachment interrupts that cycle. It asks you to stop treating every change as an emergency. If someone becomes distant, notice it without immediately chasing them. If someone disagrees with you, allow the disagreement to exist. If a situation does not unfold according to your expectations, give yourself time before deciding what it means. Most importantly, stop making another person's behavior the daily measurement of your worth. Someone can choose differently from what you hoped without proving that you are unworthy. Someone can leave without making your memories meaningless. Someone can fail to appreciate you without reducing your value. Their decision belongs to their life. Your response belongs to yours. This does not mean ignoring obvious problems. Detachment is not pretending everything is fine. If someone repeatedly disrespects you, recognize it. If a relationship consistently harms you, respond to it. If trust has been broken, take the situation seriously. Detachment simply prevents emotion from forcing you into desperate behavior. Instead of asking, how do I make this person stay? Ask, if they choose to leave, can I remain myself? Instead of asking, how do I make this work at any cost? Ask, does making this work require me to abandon my own standards? Instead of asking, what can I do to secure this outcome? Ask, how can I remain grounded regardless of the outcome? Those questions change the entire relationship you have with uncertainty. Detachment also requires practice. When you notice yourself checking, chasing, replaying, or imagining, pause. Take your attention back. Return to something concrete in your own life. Do the task in front of you. Talk to someone who brings you back to reality. Go outside. Write down what you know instead of what you fear. Give the situation enough space for its truth to reveal itself. You do not need to stop loving in order to let go. You need to stop gripping what you cannot guarantee. Because once you learn to care without clinging, you become much harder to emotionally manipulate. You can remain kind without becoming desperate. You can remain open without becoming dependent. You can experience loss without losing yourself. And that creates the next question. If you can detach from outcomes, why do you still chase people and situations that repeatedly make you question your worth? That is the habit we confront next. Chapter 5. Stop chasing what makes you question your worth. There is a difference between making an honest effort and constantly trying to convince someone to value you. The first can come from love, responsibility, or commitment. The second often comes from fear. You begin chasing a response, a relationship, an apology, an opportunity, or someone's attention because a part of you believes that finally getting it will prove that you are enough. But anything you have to repeatedly beg for can become expensive in ways that have nothing to do with money. You may know this feeling. You send another message because the previous one received no response. You explain yourself one more time because you believe the right words will finally make someone understand. You keep giving chances because you remember how good things were at the beginning. You tolerate inconsistency because you are attached to the possibility that the person might eventually become who you hoped they would be. The problem is not that you cared. The problem begins when caring requires you to repeatedly abandon yourself. Chasing creates a strange psychological trap. The less certain you become that someone wants you, the more intensely you may try to secure their attention. Every small sign of interest feels enormous because you have been deprived of certainty. A brief message can feel like hope. A little affection can erase weeks of disappointment. You begin measuring your emotional state by tiny changes in someone else's behavior. That is not peace. That is emotional dependence on unpredictable signals. Stop and examine the pattern. Are you being chosen, or are you constantly campaigning to be chosen? Are you building a relationship together, or are you carrying most of it while calling your exhaustion loyalty? These questions may hurt, but honest questions can save you from years of quiet self-abandonment. Walking away does not mean you never cared. It means you have recognized that your effort cannot manufacture another person's willingness. You can communicate clearly. You can give someone a fair opportunity. You can show up sincerely. But after that, their response belongs to them. Let it belong to them. There is dignity in allowing people to reveal what they actually want, instead of constantly persuading them to give you what you wish they wanted. The same principle applies beyond relationships. Stop chasing approval from people who have decided not to understand you. Stop chasing opportunities that repeatedly show you they are not available. Stop chasing an old version of yourself because you are embarrassed by who you are today. Stop chasing an imagined future that requires you to ignore the evidence of your present. This does not mean becoming passive or giving up quickly. Sometimes persistence is necessary. The difference is whether persistence is producing meaningful movement or simply prolonging your attachment. Create a simple rule, make your effort clear, make it sincere, and then pay attention to the response. If the response is consistent, build. If the response is uncertain, observe. If the response repeatedly diminishes your dignity, step back. You do not need to turn disappointment into hatred. You do not need to make someone the villain to justify leaving. Sometimes the most mature conclusion is simply, this is not giving me what I need, and I am no longer willing to lose myself trying to make it different. Your worth does not increase when someone finally chooses you. It was never waiting for their decision. And once you stop chasing what keeps pulling away, you create enough space to confront another attachment, the one that may have been quietly following you for years. The past. Chapter 6. Close the door on what the past keeps reopening. After you stop chasing what keeps pulling away, you may expect peace to arrive immediately. Sometimes it does not. You can remove yourself from a situation and still carry it mentally. The person is gone, the conversation is over, the relationship has ended, yet your mind continues returning to the same place. This is the strange persistence of the past. It does not need physical access to remain emotionally present. You replay what happened. You imagine a different response. You wonder whether one conversation could have changed everything. You remember the good moments and temporarily forget why things ended. Or you remember the painful moments and wish you had protected yourself sooner. Your mind keeps editing an old story, hoping to discover an ending that feels better than the one you received. But the past does not change because you revisit it. Reflection can teach you. Repetition can trap you. That distinction matters. There is value in looking backward when you are trying to understand yourself. Maybe you recognize a pattern you ignored. Maybe you discover that you tolerated behavior because you were afraid of losing someone. Maybe you realize that you should have spoken sooner, listened more carefully, or trusted your instincts. These discoveries can become useful. But learning the lesson does not require living inside the lesson forever. Ask yourself what you are actually seeking when you revisit an old situation. Are you looking for understanding, forgiveness, proof that you were right, a different ending, permission to stop feeling guilty, someone's apology? Sometimes what we call closure is really a desire to make the past emotionally satisfying. We want the other person to understand what they did. We want them to regret it. We want them to admit that we mattered. We want the final conversation to repair everything the earlier conversations damaged. That may never happen. And your life cannot remain paused while you wait for a person who may never provide the ending you imagine. Closure can sometimes be something you create yourself. You can acknowledge that something mattered and still accept that it is finished. You can admit that you were hurt without requiring the person who hurt you to validate the pain. You can forgive without restoring access. You can remember someone without returning to them. Most importantly, stop confusing memory with obligation. A memory is evidence that something happened. It is not a command to go back. When the past returns, do not immediately fight it. Notice it. Say to yourself, that happened, and I am here now. Then bring your attention back to the present. You are not required to solve yesterday every time your mind remembers it. If you made a mistake, take responsibility and change the behavior. If someone hurt you, learn what the experience taught you about boundaries and self-respect. If you lost something valuable, allow yourself to grieve it, but do not turn grief into a permanent residence. You cannot build a peaceful future while constantly negotiating with an old reality. The goal is not to erase your history. Your past helped shape you, but it does not have to keep directing you. close the door gently. You do not need to slam it. You do not need revenge. You do not need a dramatic final speech. You simply need to stop reopening it every time you feel lonely, uncertain, or nostalgic. And once you stop allowing the past to control your present, another responsibility becomes clear. You must protect the life you are building now. That requires boundaries. Chapter 7. Build boundaries before resentment builds you. Once you stop reopening the past, you begin to notice something important about the present. Peace does not survive on good intentions alone. You can know what you want, understand what you will no longer tolerate, and still lose your stability if you keep allowing the same behaviors into your life. This is where boundaries become necessary. A boundary is not a wall designed to punish people. It is a clear decision about how you will participate. It tells you what you are willing to accept, what you are not willing to accept, and what you will do when a line is crossed. A boundary is less about controlling another person and more about controlling your own access, time, energy, and response. Without boundaries, people often become exhausted before they realize they are angry. They say yes when they mean no. They answer every call because they feel guilty ignoring one. They keep explaining themselves to people who are committed to misunderstanding them. They tolerate disrespect because they are afraid of appearing difficult. Then resentment slowly grows. Resentment is often delayed honesty. It can be the emotional result of repeatedly saying yes when something inside you has been saying no. That is why building boundaries early is healthier than waiting until frustration turns into bitterness. Start with something simple. Notice where you regularly feel drained after interacting with someone. Pay attention to the conversations that leave you tense, guilty, or emotionally confused. Notice the requests you accept while secretly wishing you had declined. These moments are clues. Then ask yourself, what boundary would reduce this pattern? Maybe you need to stop responding immediately to every message. Maybe you need to end conversations when they become insulting. Maybe you need to stop discussing personal decisions with people who use your vulnerability against you. Maybe you need to limit how much time you spend around someone whose constant negativity affects your thinking. A boundary does not always require a dramatic announcement. Sometimes it looks like leaving the conversation. Sometimes it means saying, "I cannot do that." Sometimes it means giving fewer explanations. Sometimes it means changing your availability, and sometimes it means creating enough distance that the same pattern no longer has easy access to you. One of the most important lessons about boundaries is this: you cannot establish a boundary and then depend on the other person to enforce it for you. If someone repeatedly crosses a line, your response must change. Otherwise, your boundary is only a preference you have expressed. That may feel uncomfortable at first. People who benefited from your lack of boundaries may question your new behavior. They may call you distant, selfish, difficult, or changed. You have to become comfortable with being misunderstood. Not every accusation deserves a defense. Your responsibility is not to convince everyone that your boundary is reasonable. Your responsibility is to live according to it. At the same time, boundaries should not become an excuse to avoid every uncomfortable relationship. Healthy relationships require communication, flexibility, forgiveness, and patience. A boundary is not, "Everyone must behave exactly as I want." It is, "I know what behavior I can participate in without betraying myself." That distinction keeps boundaries healthy. As you practice them, something unexpected happens. You begin trusting yourself more. Every time you honor a limit you once ignored, you send yourself a message: "My well-being matters, and I will act accordingly." But even strong boundaries can be tested. Someone may criticize you, someone may provoke you, someone may deliberately push against the limits you have created. That is why the next step is not another external boundary. It is internal control. You must learn to create space between what happens to you and what you choose to do about it. Chapter 8. Pause before you give your power away. A boundary can tell someone where the line is, but a boundary becomes meaningful only when you can remain steady after someone crosses it. This is where emotional strength moves from the outside world into your own mind. You cannot control whether someone provokes you. You cannot guarantee that people will speak respectfully, understand your intentions, or treat you fairly. What you can control is the moment after the trigger. That brief space between what happens and what you do next may be one of the most important spaces in your entire life. Most regrettable reactions happen quickly. Someone says something insulting and you answer before thinking. Someone ignores you and you send a message you later wish you had never written. Someone criticizes you and you immediately defend yourself. Someone disappoints you and you make a permanent decision while experiencing a temporary emotion. The emotion is real. The urgency is often not. This is why the pause matters. A pause is not weakness. It is a deliberate interruption of instinct. It gives your thinking mind enough time to catch up with your emotional response. You are not pretending that something did not hurt. You are deciding that the hurt does not get to choose your behavior. When something triggers you, begin by doing less. Do not immediately reply. Do not immediately explain. Do not immediately post. Do not immediately make a threat, end a relationship, or send the message you wrote while angry. Step away, take a breath, put the phone down, drink some water, walk for a few minutes. Write what you want to say without sending it. Let the first wave of emotion pass before you decide what deserves to happen next. This small practice can change your life because emotional intensity often creates a false sense of urgency. Your mind tells you, respond now or you will lose your chance. In reality, many situations become clearer when you give them time. The pause also allows you to ask better questions. What actually happened? What am I assuming? What emotion am I experiencing? What response would I respect tomorrow? That last question is especially powerful. Imagine yourself waking up the next morning and remembering the decision you are about to make. Would you feel proud of how you handled yourself? Or would you wish you had waited? Use tomorrow's perspective before tomorrow arrives. This does not mean becoming passive. There are moments when immediate action is necessary. Emotional control is not about endlessly delaying decisions. It is about choosing deliberately instead of reacting automatically. You can be angry and still speak calmly. You can be hurt and still maintain your dignity. You can disagree without turning disagreement into warfare. You can recognize disrespect without becoming disrespectful yourself. That is strength. There is also another reason to master the pause. Reactions teach people how to access you. If someone learns that a certain comment can instantly make you defensive, they know exactly where your emotional buttons are. When you stop reacting automatically, you remove that easy access. You become less predictable to provocation, and more importantly, you become more trustworthy to yourself. You begin discovering that you can experience intense emotions without obeying them. Anger can exist without becoming an insult. Fear can exist without becoming avoidance. Disappointment can exist without becoming desperation. That is emotional discipline. But even after you learn to control your reactions, one powerful source of disturbance may remain: the opinions of other people. If their approval still determines how you see yourself, your peace will remain vulnerable. So the next step is to stop handing other people the authority to define who you are. Chapter 9. Stop renting your identity to other people's opinions. You can learn to pause before reacting and still find yourself emotionally shaken by one person's opinion. A criticism can ruin your afternoon. A compliment can lift you for days. A stranger's judgment can stay in your mind longer than a genuine conversation with someone who knows you well. When this happens, the problem is deeper than sensitivity. You have allowed external opinions to become part of the system that determines how you see yourself. That system has to change. Other people will always have opinions about you. Some will be informed, some will be careless, some will come from love, others will come from insecurity, jealousy, misunderstanding, or simple ignorance. If you treat every opinion as evidence about your character, you will never have a stable sense of who you are. You will keep adjusting yourself to whoever is speaking. Imagine trying to build a house while allowing every passerby to move the walls. One person says the doorway should be larger, so you change it. Someone else dislikes the windows, so you replace them. Another person says the entire structure looks wrong, and suddenly you are rebuilding the foundation. Eventually, you are exhausted because you are not actually building a home. You are building an argument against everyone else's preferences. Your identity needs a stronger foundation. That does not mean ignoring criticism. In fact, mentally strong people can examine criticism without automatically accepting it or rejecting it. When someone points out a weakness, ask, is there something useful here? If there is, learn from it. If there is not, let it pass. The goal is not to become immune to judgment. The goal is to become selective about which judgments deserve consideration. Start defining yourself through your actions. Are you honest when dishonesty would be easier? Do you keep promises you make to yourself? Do you treat people with respect even when you are frustrated? Do you take responsibility when you are wrong? Do you continue working toward meaningful goals when nobody is watching? These answers tell you more about who you are than a stranger's opinion ever could. There will be moments when someone misunderstands you despite your best efforts. Resist the urge to explain yourself endlessly. Sometimes you can clarify, sometimes you can correct a false impression, but sometimes the other person has already decided what they want to believe. Let them. Being misunderstood is uncomfortable, but it is not fatal. You do not need universal approval to have a peaceful life. In fact, the pursuit of universal approval can quietly destroy peace because it forces you to monitor every word, expression, decision, and relationship. You become a performer in your own life, constantly checking the audience. Step off the stage. Choose a few principles that matter to you. Let those principles become your internal measuring system. When a decision is difficult, ask whether it is consistent with the person you are trying to become. When criticism arrives, compare it with those principles. When praise arrives, enjoy it without depending on it. This creates something valuable, internal approval. You stop asking, do they like me? And start asking, do I respect the way I handled this? You stop asking, did I impress them? And start asking, did I act according to my values? You stop asking, why don't they understand me? And start asking, am I being honest with myself? That shift changes your relationship with other people. Their opinions become information rather than instructions. You can listen without surrendering. You can learn without shrinking. You can be criticized without collapsing and praised without becoming dependent. But once you stop living for approval, another challenge appears. You will have to make choices that disappoint some people, and that is where choosing yourself becomes necessary. Chapter 10. Choose yourself without becoming selfish. Once you stop allowing other people's opinions to define you, you face a more difficult responsibility, making choices based on what you genuinely believe is right for your life. This sounds empowering until you realize that choosing yourself can disappoint people. Someone may not understand your decision. Someone may call you distant, selfish, difficult, or changed. And sometimes the people who benefited from your constant availability will be the first to resist when you become more selective with your time and energy. That resistance can make you question yourself. Do not confuse someone's disappointment with your wrongdoing. Choosing yourself does not mean believing you are more important than everyone else. It means recognizing that your needs, values, health, time, and dignity are also part of the equation. You can care about other people without making their comfort the permanent price of your own stability. For a long time, you may have practiced a version of kindness that quietly harmed you. You said yes because saying no felt uncomfortable. You stayed silent because honesty might create tension. You kept giving chances because leaving made you feel guilty. You accepted responsibilities that were never yours because you were afraid someone would think less of you. Eventually, you may discover that being available to everyone has made you unavailable to yourself. Choosing yourself begins by noticing that pattern. Ask yourself before making a decision, am I doing this because I genuinely want to, or because I am afraid of how someone will react if I don't? That question can expose a surprising amount of people-pleasing. There is nothing wrong with helping someone. There is nothing wrong with compromise. Healthy relationships require generosity. The problem appears when generosity becomes self-erasure. If keeping another person happy consistently requires you to ignore your own boundaries, values, or well-being, the relationship has become unbalanced. You need to become willing to disappoint people sometimes. That does not mean becoming careless with their feelings. It means accepting that you cannot build a meaningful life around avoiding every possible disappointment. Someone may be unhappy because you declined an invitation. Someone may be frustrated because you stopped answering messages late at night. Someone may question your decision to leave a situation that was damaging you. You can respect their feelings without surrendering your decision. This requires a new definition of guilt. Guilt does not always mean you have done something wrong. Sometimes guilt simply appears because you have done something unfamiliar. If you have spent years putting everyone else first, even a healthy boundary can initially feel selfish. Let the feeling exist without obeying it. Start choosing yourself through small actions. Keep the commitment you made to yourself. Rest when you are exhausted instead of performing strength for everyone else. Protect time for the goals you keep postponing. Say no when the request violates something important to you. Stop explaining every personal decision to people who are not responsible for your life. And remember that choosing yourself does not require announcing it. You do not need to tell everyone that you are entering a new chapter. You can simply behave differently. Your standards become visible through your decisions. Your self-respect becomes visible through what you tolerate. Your priorities become visible through what you consistently protect. Over time, something changes. You stop needing permission to live according to your values. You become less afraid of disappointing people because you have learned that temporary discomfort is sometimes the price of long-term peace. But choosing yourself eventually leads to an even harder decision. There are situations where boundaries are not enough. There are relationships where communication does not repair the pattern. There are environments where staying requires too much of you. At some point, protecting your peace may require more than saying no. It may require walking away. Chapter 11. Walk away without revenge, drama, or explanation. There comes a point when protecting your peace requires more than changing your response. Sometimes the situation itself has to change. You have communicated, you have tried to understand, you have established boundaries, you have given opportunities for things to improve. Yet the same pattern keeps returning. At that point, staying may no longer be patience. It may simply be fear wearing the clothes of loyalty. Walking away is one of the hardest actions because leaving something does not automatically mean you stopped caring about it. You can still love someone and recognize that being close to them is unhealthy for you. You can appreciate what a relationship once gave you and still accept that it no longer belongs in your present. You can remember the good without using the good as an excuse to tolerate the bad. This is where emotional maturity becomes visible. Immature endings often demand an audience. You want the other person to understand everything they did wrong. You want them to regret losing you. You want one final conversation where every unanswered question is finally answered and every injustice is acknowledged. Sometimes that conversation happens. Sometimes it never will. Do not make your freedom dependent on an ending you cannot control. You do not need someone to agree with your decision before you are allowed to make it. You do not need them to admit that they hurt you. You do not need them to apologize perfectly, and you certainly do not need to destroy them emotionally just because they disappointed you. Revenge keeps you connected to the person you claim you want to leave behind. If you spend months trying to make someone regret losing you, they are still occupying your mind. If you constantly check whether they noticed your absence, you are still waiting for their reaction. If you create a performance designed to prove that you are doing better, you are still performing for them. That is not freedom. A quieter exit is often stronger. You decide what you will no longer participate in, and then you follow through. You reduce unnecessary contact. You stop reopening arguments. You stop monitoring their life. You stop searching for opportunities to prove your point. You allow the relationship to become part of your history instead of keeping it active through constant emotional attention. This does not mean every situation should end silently. Sometimes a clear conversation is necessary. Sometimes safety, family responsibilities, work, or other circumstances require careful planning and communication. Walking away is not about following one rigid formula. It is about recognizing when continued participation is costing more than it is giving. And when you leave, leave with your character intact. Do not become cruel because someone treated you poorly. Do not use their weaknesses as weapons. Do not reveal private information to gain sympathy. Do not turn a painful ending into a public trial. You are allowed to protect yourself without becoming destructive. There is also a quieter form of walking away that happens inside your mind. You stop waiting for the person to become different. You stop rehearsing the conversation you wish you could have. You stop asking what you could have done to guarantee a different outcome. You accept that some relationships end not because one person is completely evil and the other is completely innocent, but because the relationship no longer supports the people involved. That acceptance can be deeply freeing. Walking away does not mean you lost. Sometimes it means you finally stopped trying to win a game that was damaging you. The real victory is not making someone regret losing you. The real victory is reaching a point where their regret is no longer important. But even after you leave, there may still be something heavy following you. You may continue carrying their problems, emotions, expectations, guilt, and pain as though they remain your responsibility. The next step is learning how to put down what was never yours to carry. Chapter 12. Put down the emotional baggage that is not yours. Walking away can create physical distance, but distance does not automatically create emotional freedom. You can leave a situation and still carry its weight. You may continue worrying about how the other person is doing, feeling guilty for choosing yourself, wondering whether they are angry, or believing that their problems are somehow yours to solve. This is where another form of attachment appears, emotional responsibility for people who are responsible for themselves. Caring about someone can make this difficult to recognize. When you love someone, you naturally want to help. You want to protect them from pain. You want to fix what is broken. You may even believe that being a good person means being available whenever someone needs you. But there is a difference between supporting someone and carrying them. Support says, I am here when I can genuinely help. Carrying says, if you are struggling, I cannot be okay. That second position slowly destroys peace. Other people's emotions are not automatically your assignments. Someone can be disappointed with you without you having done anything wrong. Someone can be angry because you established a boundary. Someone can be anxious, insecure, confused, or unhappy, and you can care about them without taking responsibility for eliminating those feelings. This is not cruelty. It is emotional separation. Imagine that everyone walks through life carrying an invisible backpack. Inside yours are your decisions, mistakes, responsibilities, emotions, and consequences. Inside another person's backpack are theirs. When you constantly take items from their backpack and place them into yours, you may feel compassionate at first. Eventually, however, you become exhausted under a weight that was never designed for you. Learn to return those items. If someone makes a poor decision, you can warn them, but you cannot live the consequences for them. If someone refuses to communicate, you cannot communicate on their behalf. If someone repeatedly creates chaos, you cannot build their stability for them. If someone chooses not to change, your effort cannot substitute for their decision. This becomes especially important with guilt. Ask yourself, did I actually do something wrong, or am I uncomfortable because someone is unhappy with my choice? Those are not the same thing. You may feel guilty for saying no, even when saying no was necessary. You may feel responsible for a relationship ending, even when you were only one person in the relationship. You may feel guilty for moving forward while someone else remains stuck. Do not turn compassion into self-punishment. You can acknowledge another person's pain without adopting it as your identity. There is also a practical way to begin. Before taking responsibility for someone else's problem, ask 3 questions. Did they ask me to help? Can I realistically help? And will helping require me to violate my own boundaries? If the answer to the last question is yes, reconsider. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is allow another adult to experience the consequences of their own choices. Constant rescue can prevent growth. Constant availability can create dependence. Constant fixing can teach someone that they never have to face what they created. You are not abandoning people by refusing to carry everything for them. You are recognizing where your responsibility ends. When you put down emotional baggage that was never yours, your mind becomes lighter. You have more energy for your own life, your own goals, your own relationships, and your own growth. And now the journey reaches its final stage. It is not enough to remove what disturbs your peace. You must build a life that actively protects it. Peace cannot remain something you recover only after emotional chaos. It has to become a daily discipline. Chapter 13. Train peace until it becomes your default. By now you have learned to identify what drains you. Accept reality, release control, detach from outcomes, stop chasing what diminishes you. Close the door on the past, establish boundaries, regulate your reactions, and stop carrying responsibilities that belong to other people. But there is one final problem. If peace exists only when everything is quiet, then your peace is still dependent on circumstances. Life will not stay quiet. People will disappoint you. Plans will change. Unexpected problems will appear. Some days will feel heavy for no obvious reason. If your peace depends on perfect conditions, you will spend your life waiting for conditions that rarely arrive. So stop treating peace as a lucky mood. Train it. Peace becomes stronger when it is practiced during ordinary moments, not only during crises. It begins with the way you manage your attention. If you start every morning by immediately consuming other people's opinions, arguments, headlines, and demands, your mind enters the day already crowded. Before the world asks for your attention, give some of it to yourself. Create moments of quiet. You do not need an elaborate routine. Sit without your phone for a few minutes. Take a walk without filling every second with noise. Write down what is bothering you instead of carrying it vaguely in your head. Give yourself enough silence to hear what you actually think. Then examine your mental diet. Not everything deserves repeated exposure. Some conversations educate you, others simply agitate you. Some people challenge you in healthy ways, others keep you emotionally unsettled. Some forms of entertainment help you recover, others leave your mind restless long after you stop watching. Peace requires selection. The same principle applies to relationships. You do not need hundreds of connections. You need relationships where honesty, respect, and mutual effort can exist. Pay attention to how you feel after spending time with someone. Do you feel grounded, respected, and understood? Or do you feel as though you need hours to recover from the interaction? Your body often notices what your excuses hide. Training peace also means learning how to interrupt unnecessary mental loops. When you catch yourself imagining a future argument, return to what is actually happening. When you begin replaying an old conversation, ask whether there is anything useful left to learn. When you start predicting every possible disaster, ask what action is available today. Bring your mind back to the present, again and again. This is not about achieving a perfectly calm mind. Thoughts will appear, emotions will rise, some days will be difficult. The practice is simply returning without judging yourself for having wandered. Think of peace as a path you walk repeatedly. You do not fail because you stepped away from the path. You strengthen the skill every time you notice and return. There is another important part of this discipline. Protect your promises to yourself. If you constantly tell yourself that you will rest, exercise, focus, create, sleep properly, or spend less time on things that drain you, and then repeatedly ignore those promises, your self-trust weakens. Peace becomes easier when your actions and intentions begin to agree. Keep small promises. Turn your phone off when you said you would. Leave the conversation when you said you would. Rest when your body needs it. Finish what matters. Say no when you already know the answer should be no. These actions may appear ordinary, but they teach your mind that you can trust yourself. Eventually, peace stops being something you desperately search for after a difficult day. It becomes the way you return to yourself. And that prepares you for the final transformation. Becoming someone who can experience life's turbulence without allowing it to take permanent control of your inner world. Chapter 14. Become someone who does not easily lose their center. You have spent this journey learning how to remove unnecessary weight from your mind. You identified what was draining you. You faced reality instead of arguing with it. You released the need to control other people. You learned to care without clinging, stop chasing what diminished you, close the door on the past, establish boundaries, pause before reacting, separate your identity from other people's opinions, choose yourself, walk away when necessary, and put down emotional responsibilities that were never yours. Now comes the real test. Can you remain yourself when life stops cooperating? It is easy to feel peaceful when everyone treats you well, your plans are working, your relationships are stable, and nothing unexpected interrupts your routine. The deeper form of peace appears when circumstances become uncertain and you still refuse to abandon your center. Being mentally strong does not mean becoming impossible to hurt. You will still feel disappointment. You will still experience grief. You may still become angry, anxious, lonely, or confused. Strength does not remove those emotions. It changes what you do with them. You can feel anger without becoming cruel. You can feel rejection without deciding that you are worthless. You can experience loss without believing that your entire future has disappeared. You can hear criticism without immediately questioning your identity. You can love someone without making their presence necessary for your stability. That is what emotional maturity looks like. Your center is the part of you that remains connected to your values when everything around you becomes noisy. It is the quiet decision to remember who you are, even when someone is trying to define you differently. Protect that center. When something goes wrong, return to your principles before returning to your impulses. Ask, who do I want to be in this situation? Not, what would hurt them most? Not, how can I prove I am right? Not, how can I make them regret what they did? Ask, who do I want to be? That question can change the direction of an entire life. Sometimes the answer will be patient. Sometimes it will be firm. Sometimes it will be forgiving. Sometimes it will be distant. Sometimes it will be a clear no. Mental strength is not having one response to everything. It is having enough self-awareness to choose the response that protects both your values and your well-being. You will also learn that peace and ambition can coexist. Protecting your peace does not mean becoming passive or avoiding every challenge. You can work hard, pursue meaningful goals, compete, build, create, and grow, while refusing to let every setback become a personal crisis. The goal is not a smaller life. It is a steadier one. You stop giving every inconvenience the power to become an identity crisis. You stop turning every rejection into a verdict. You stop treating every ending as proof that something is wrong with you. You begin to understand that life can disappoint you without defeating you. And when you reach that point, letting go no longer feels like losing. You can release people without hatred. You can leave situations without revenge. You can forgive without reopening the door. You can accept uncertainty without constantly trying to predict it. You can care deeply while maintaining your own center. That is the freedom this journey has been leading toward. Your peace is no longer something other people can easily hand you or take away. It has become something you actively participate in protecting. There will still be difficult days. There will still be moments when your emotions pull you off balance. When that happens, return. Return to what is true. Return to what you control. Return to your values. Return to yourself. You do not need to become someone who never loses their balance. Become someone who knows how to find their center again. That is mental strength. Conclusion: nothing is worth your peace. You have reached the end of this journey, but the real work begins when the audiobook stops playing and life starts testing what you have learned. There will be people who disappoint you. There will be conversations that end without the explanation you wanted. There will be plans that collapse, relationships that change, doors that close, and moments when the past suddenly feels close again. You cannot prevent all of that. What you can change is the amount of power you allow those experiences to have over you. You now know where your peace leaks away. You know how easily attention can become attachment, how attachment can become reaction, and how repeated reactions can become exhaustion. You have learned to face reality instead of fighting it, separate your responsibilities from everyone else's, detach without becoming cold, and stop chasing what repeatedly makes you question your worth. You have learned that boundaries are not punishments. They are decisions, that walking away does not require hatred, that forgiveness does not require renewed access, that being misunderstood does not mean you have failed, and that choosing yourself does not make you selfish. Most importantly, you have learned that emotional strength is not the absence of emotion. You will still care. You will still miss people. You will still experience disappointment. You will still have days when something touches an old wound. Strength means you no longer have to obey every feeling simply because you feel it. When anger arrives, Pause. When fear appears, examine it. When rejection hurts, remember who you are. When the past calls, remember where you are going. When someone tries to pull you into unnecessary conflict, remember that not every battle deserves your energy. And when you have to walk away, do it without destroying yourself in the process. Your peace does not need to be defended through constant arguments. Sometimes it is protected through silence, sometimes through distance, sometimes through a firm no, sometimes through acceptance, and sometimes through the simple decision to stop returning to what has already shown you its cost. Do not measure your strength by how much pain you can tolerate. Measure it by how honestly you can recognize what is hurting you and how courageously you can choose a healthier direction. You do not need a perfect life to have peace. You need a mind that knows what deserves its attention and what does not. So go forward differently. Care, but do not carry everything. Love, but do not lose yourself. Forgive, but learn. Give, but keep your boundaries. Let go without bitterness. And whenever life becomes loud, return to yourself, because nothing is worth the permanent surrender of your peace.